Today we're sitting down with Niresh Deonarain, President Asia Pacific and Africa from Asenko. Welcome Niresh, it's great to have you here today. So do you mind telling us a little bit more about your professional background and your role at Asenko?
Yeah, thank you. Firstly, thank you very much for the opportunity. So, born in South Africa, chemical engineer by profession, I started my career in the operations space. So, used to work for Goldfields way back a long time ago. Enjoyed that very much. I should probably say I love mining. The mining industry has always been exciting to me. And I wanted to actually, at a young age, have a fully rounded exposure in the mining industry. You know, it started off for me in the operations space. I was a crusher operator, my first job. And that led me to become a plant metallurgist, a senior plant metallurgist, and then a plant manager. I was very happy to do that across South Africa and also the other Goldfield sites. I got exposed into projects, and that got me to go to some very exciting places around the world. One in Africa, but also in places like Siberia, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, which is fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic. It sounds like you've had a global approach to your work and bringing that into Ausenco today.
You know, I'm very passionate on the technical aspects, and again, it's the learnings that I bring from all the various sites. And then 5 years ago, I joined Asenko in Peru as the vice president for the Peru office. And for me, the challenge there was grow the business, try and apply all the great things that Asenko has and put them into practice in our studies. And the last probably 3 or 4 years is where I've actually had a senior management role and recently promoted as of last year to be the president for APAC Africa, based here in Perth, and loving it.
What do you believe is the driving need for strong environmental, social and governance performance in the sector?
From a global perspective, you know, stakeholders and shareholders are actually focusing more on ESG. It's becoming a theme where it's not just tell me you have a good project, tell me that you're contributing positively to the community and to the larger stakeholder and shareholder community. I think the most important thing is, are we actually extracting metals in the most effective way, evaluating aspects around environmental, social, and governance that goes beyond just compliance? So looking at the full value chain and actually asking ourselves, are we putting the best systems in place? Not from a compliance perspective, from a checkbox perspective, if we look at it through the environmental lens, but really much more, what is the global impact of that? And so it moves from a project specific to a global aspect. How does my project actually impact the overall global impacts of producing that metal?
So Niresh, what is Asenko's approach to ESG?
We question ourselves every day, finding a better way. And it's something that we do in everything, and not just in the engineering exercises that we do on a daily basis. We challenge ourselves, is there a better way to do something? And so we take that into our design approaches, our design basis, you know, looking at how can we minimize bulk material, how can we reduce footprint, power reduction, better utilization, how can we get more for less? And that really is embedded in what I would say our culture, our DNA, and also the downstream impacts, you know, not depositing material into a tailings dam, or even some of the things that we may not think as a considerable value, but absolutely is, you know, and holistically look at, you know, can we use waste, for example, to, you know, as construction material, you know, instead of placing it in a waste dump. But it goes beyond just engineering. I think it's also just a mindset change, as in, we do understand that we all have a role to play. So it's a lot of these strategies, it can be very simplistic, but the impacts of those are absolutely significant.
So my next question would be, how can people in the resources sector, regardless of title or role, drive better ESG outcomes?
I think the fundamental thing is mindset. You know, if we go through cookie cutter or copy paste, which sometimes does exist in our industry, unfortunately, you lose the opportunity of, is there a better way to do something? And I feel like that mindset change is absolutely fundamental, you know, and it sets the basis for everything that follows after that. In an area, for example, where water is limited, you know, that should be the focus point in terms of, you know, for this particular project, how do we actually minimize water usage? What technologies are there? instead of actually saying, how do we maximize metal recovery or metal production, it's really taking into consideration all these things.
What role does innovation play with regards to ESG?
The simple answer is a huge role. I think we as humanity, we've been faced with various challenges, over the last few centuries, right? And every time we've been faced with a challenge, innovation has come in and actually helped us and supported us, and we've actually become better for it. The mining industry or the resource sector is no different. I think there's an acknowledgement that, the way we were mining 100 years ago, 200 years ago was not ideal. I think the whole focus on ESG has been fantastic, but it's been very good to actually question, are there better ways to do things? For the classic example would be, if you've got mineral in the ground, how do we minimize the impact of that, right? And so there's been a lot of technology advancements in ore sorting, for example. So, remove material up front, so you're not actually processing a large volume, you're processing a lower volume at a higher grade, so concentrating up. And I think that there's been significant advancements in the space in the last few years, which I think is going to be very, very exciting for the mining industry going forward.
How has Asenko been working with AusIMM to promote better ESG outcomes?
Firstly, I think the partnership with AusIMM has been fantastic for us. It's been a really great last few months. We've actually been involved in webinars, a series of great webinars. If you haven't actually watched those, please do so.
Yes.
Fantastic content. And, we do have a lot of technical specialists with our group that do like writing articles. And so we have put out a few of those, which are absolutely fantastic reads. So, this involves individuals that have spent a considerable time in the industry and drawing on their knowledge and experience. And then the other ones, the thought leadership, I in fact have been part of that. It's been was a fantastic session for me.
Was there a particular part of that panel discussion that really spoke to you?
I thoroughly enjoyed the one that I was part of, and we talked a lot about First Nations. Really important here in Australia. I think we've come a long way, but there's still a lot of work to do. But for me, the key thing is we're having the right conversations, and we have actually made progress, which is good to see. But I do think the more we talk about it, and the more we bring the awareness in terms of at a very early stage too. One of the questions I was asked was, when do you initiate this? And the answer is as early as possible. It's even if you start doing exploration work, it's you're the first people on site, and you have that early engagement with community. It's very important you set the example right at the start.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Niresh. It's been brilliant finding out more about your professional background and also what Asenko is doing with AusIMM to drive better outcomes for ESG. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You can find more information and the latest content via our website at www.ausimm.com.